Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into, honestly, one of the most enigmatic and culturally pervasive subjects in modern history, the Zodiac Killer. You know, sometimes it's the absolute sparsest information that creates the most fascinating framework for a mystery. So let's break down exactly how an identity can endure for so long when the concrete data is, well, intentionally scarce.
How does a high-profile figure just vanish into history? Now, we aren't going to be looking at gory details or, wild speculation today. Instead, we're actually examining the profound absence of information. The very fact that we're left with almost nothing but a name, that perfectly illustrates the massive void this figure left behind. It's wild to think about.
The Zodiac identity. When we strip away all the pop culture adaptations and the amateur sleuthing, what are we actually left with? Literally, just a moniker. It's an identity constructed not from a biography, but entirely from a self-assigned label.
So in this vast ocean of internet theories, we really have to anchor ourselves to the basics. The Zodiac Killer is simply the titular subject of this historical investigation and the sole focus of our source material. That is basically the only concrete shore we can land on here, which sets a strict, fact-based boundary for literally everything that follows.
Moving right along to the timeline of events. Even with minimal explicit data, a conceptual narrative arc still absolutely exists. I mean, every historical investigation relies on some sort of sequence, right? The progression here is a pretty stark three-part act. Year 1 marks the emergence, that exact moment the identity bursts into the public consciousness. Then, Year 2 brings the communications. This is the active phase where the moniker is really cemented into history. And finally, Year 3, the case goes completely cold. You really don't need some massive spreadsheet of dates to grasp the trajectory here. It's just this simple, chilling life cycle of the phenomenon.
Cryptograms and communications. The word Zodiac inherently carries the heavy weight of those infamous messages. You see, this identity wasn't established through actions in a vacuum. No, it was built through this deliberate, highly cryptic, and incredibly public dialogue.
Which brings us to the absolute core of the mystery, the name itself, Zodiac Killer. That one isolated phrase carries just an immense amount of historical weight. It really forces us to ask ourselves, how many external assumptions are we bringing to just those two words? It's a super powerful reminder to pause and acknowledge exactly what is, and maybe more importantly, what isn't actually documented. Enduring mystery. The Zodiac Killer remains this completely unresolved piece of history precisely because the concrete facts are just so incredibly limited. It's like a permanent open loop in the historical record. And let's be real, human nature absolutely hates an open loop.
When we strip away all that background noise, the factual boundaries are honestly pretty jarring. We have an explicit source mention, the Zodiac Killer, but absolutely no additional facts provided to back it up. None. That absolute absence of data is exactly what elevates this from just your standard cold case to the ultimate unsolved mystery. It's just a striking example of learning by omission.
So what answers remain hidden regarding the true identity of the Zodiac Killer? Think about it. When history gives us literally nothing more than a two-word name, the space for those hidden answers becomes virtually infinite. Pretty crazy, right? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the unknown, and I'll catch you next time.